Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our second energy webinar. This series has been designed as a knowledge sharing platform. As we know, it can be so hard to stay on top of all the new technologies, all the news, as well as staying on top of all your day-to-day jobs. Don't feel like you need to take any notes or take it all in straight away. We'll be sending out a recording of everything later today. And also, if you feel that anyone within your company or any friends or colleagues that you have will be interested in it, please feel free to share the recording. And if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat on the side, as towards the end of the webinar, we'll have a Q&A section, which Mick will be going through. The agenda for today. We're going to be talking about the different types of electronic security. This is the CCTV, the PIDS, different varieties. Also, why would you invest in it? And we talk about using automation to protect the sites and as well as alerting all the staff members. We discuss how Bedroq supports operators with their site security, and then also what's next. Some of you might not know who Bedroq are. Well, we're experts in secure, resilient networks, managed solutions where high performance is absolutely critical. The organizations that we work with throughout the UK have the highest possible security requirements imaginable. We also have accreditations and partnerships with vendors such as Fortinet, RuggedCom, Bosch, Milestone, so we can collaborate with our partners if required on to deliver a solution that fits your needs. I'm going to hand over to Mick, who is our Senior Technical Architect.
Hi everyone, and good morning and welcome, as Dylan says, to our second webinar. So good to see so many people with us today. So yes, we're going to be talking about electronic security. And as Dylan said, we're going to be starting off with looking at some different types and how we can utilize those in protecting your sites. So we're going to start off just by having a look at some of the different types that we can pull together and centrally manage and work with, etc. So we've got PIDS, as Dylan mentioned that. So that is perimeter intrusion detection. So that's fence line, those types of things. IDS, so intrusion detection. We're going to be looking at access control. Maybe what people might consider to be traditional CCTV, but also how that really is like the central hub of how these things connect together and can be centrally managed. We're going to be looking at analytics from those CCTV and also from other areas as well where we can get data. We're going to be looking at how we can integrate your intercoms, PA systems and those types of things, as well as kind of intertelephony, because those things are kind of closely related. So we have a look at PIDS, perimeter intrusion detection. So this can make up a number of technologies really. The one most people think of is fence line protection, where there'll be some kind of wire or cable that goes around the fence, and when somebody makes that fence wobble or whatever, tries to get over the fence, then that sets off an alarm. But we do have some other technologies as well where so if fences are not really appropriate for that, or maybe there isn't even a proper fence to hang that kind of technology from. So we can use cameras with, for example, radar technologies, and also we can use cameras using analytics. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. So yeah, so in terms of fence line protection, these days modern systems can use fiber optic cables as opposed to traditional copper ones, which would have been hung off fences traditionally. And we can use that to create what's essentially a virtual zones. So we don't have to have set zones of cable, which is how it used to be. We can break up that piece of fiber optic cable virtually into sections. And so we can do things such as segmenting certain areas, breaking up into smaller zones. So when a zone triggers, we've got a bit clearer idea where that has been triggered. And also because of it's a bit more versatile than copper, we're able to install that as part of, say, cable protection. So for example, solar farms where cabling may be on tray on the floor, we can basically install that directly on the tray and do that kind of thing. And also the fact that this stuff, if it's cut up to the point where it's cut, it still works as well, unlike a traditional cable, which once you cut, if somebody decides to cut that, it stops working. And it really does give a lot more versatility and potentially a bit more viable solution than maybe some of the old copper stuff where you had to basically cut all the trees down, you can't have anything touching the fence, that type of thing. And of course we can integrate that into a video management system, such as the example that's on the slide, so that if a zone does activate, then we can get an alert on the screen that the operators can react to. As we said, we do also have radar cameras. There's a picture of one there. So with this, we can pair up a radar with a traditional camera with intrusion up to around about 200 meters, so a 400 meter radius. And because it's radar, obviously we can have a lot more detail, and we can basically differentiate between different things such as people, etc., etc., to help protect that fence line and that boundary. And again, we can incorporate them into the video management system as well, which allows them to be monitored by remote staff as well. So moving on, if we have a look at IDS, so that's intrusion detection or a burglar alarm, depending on how you want to call it. So IDS, often used to protect buildings from access, the usual types of things where you come up to a building, have to put a number in a keypad, and that obviously disables that intrusion detection. They can often act as separate systems. There's one on a slide here. However, even that as a traditional system still has connectivity that we can utilize, and we can add traditional, we can add network connections, sorry, that allow us again to give connectivity into our video management system. So therefore we can get alerts if there's an intrusion, and we can also do some deeper integration, such as if we were doing things such as door contacts and that kind of thing, so we know when a door's open or closed, rather than putting a completely separate set of door contacts, that type of thing, we can utilize the contacts off that system. And therefore, if you just want an alert when somebody's just left a door open, we can utilize it for that as well. So we can integrate those types of things. Access control. So access control, I guess a lot of people have got this as well, which is, controls access to your site, maybe initially, into buildings, rooms, and maybe even into individual kind of assets. You can often obviously put that across your entire site, but it can also be used to control hardware such as vehicle gates, pedestrian gates, those types of things. So when somebody walks up to one of those, they can either put in a code or do whatever, speak on an intercom, and then that gate can either be opened or it can be opened remotely. You can have either or both of those things. Modern systems can also integrate into video management, visitor management, should I say, visitor management. So if you've got visitor management systems for signing in people, that type of thing, or even things where you might get given temporary QR codes, especially for some of you guys that have your light manned, unmanned sites, whereby you'll often have, say, third-party engineers, and maybe you are up to now, you've got the same code that's on the front gate and you're having to keep giving that out, which is not great for security. Or you've got other more complicated ways, maybe you even have to send your own engineers there to meet that person who, or meet that third-party company who is trusted, but because of the kind of how the system works, you still have to send somebody on site to let them in and function. You can do temporary QR codes, and what they do, they can get something on a phone, they can walk up to the gate, they'll either be a reader of some description, or even some of the cameras, you can just hold your phone up to it, and then it'll let that person in, and it can be obviously expire at the end of the day, that kind of thing, which is fantastic. But also, as well as things like that, we can also look at things such as key security, because obviously with sites like yours, quite often, yes, there's the access control side of it and that kind of thing, but actually you can have all these areas that require manual keys, either as the primary access or as a backup access. and therefore having a way of controlling the keys on site. So if you've got a light or a unmanned site, you've got the ability to give access to personnel or even third parties to keys, so they come up and walk to something up the device that's on the slide, put in a PIN code or wherever it will be that they've been given up front, and the door will open, and then it will only allow them to access the keys they're allowed to access. So again, we've got a few other kind of tools in the old toolbox that we can utilize in terms of access to systems. So having a look at intercom and telephony and PA systems, or tannoys, whatever you wish to call them, utilized for both security and health and safety. If there's any problems on site that have come up on remote monitoring, looking at SCADA systems and that type of thing, you can let the people on site know before they enter a room or before they get there that there's a problem, and for site evacuation or whatever you wish to use it for. I do know some people just use it just to let the staff know that either say a gas turbine is going to be firing up, or even just let them know there's some kind of tests happening. So they used informational purposes as well as health and safety. But one of the other key ones was for security as well. So if somebody hoofs the fence, that comes up on the alerting. The people at the remote operations can just send them a quick polite message via a microphone that they've been seen and watched, and maybe they should think about leaving. So something that's pretty new in this area really is things like the strobe speakers, which there's a picture there. That is actually just one unit. It just has all those colors. So they're great, and they're something that we're just looking at introducing at the moment. And they're great for just visual either deterrence. So when the IDS or wherever is switched on, we can just make that red so people know there's something. Or when somebody disarms it, it can go green. Or if there's a problem, it can sit and flash. You can do all these things. It's got a speaker built in, so it's got kind of lots of things going on there, which is really good. Obviously, intercoms as well. They can be integrated centrally into a system alongside either access control, either into video management, as CCTV, or even as an intercom, for speaking back to the remote control center, who can then either remotely let somebody in or whatever you guys wish to do, really. We do know of some of our clients who still maybe have some more traditional, should I say, telephony systems. Maybe they need those with a PBX because of the they need the kind of criticality of that, rather than using a VoIP system, and therefore they may want to hook them up to their phone systems. Pretty much though, most of these types of products, in fact all of them shown there, all support SIP as well, so they can also be connected up to a PBX if you've got one of those on site or centrally. So yeah, quite versatile again in the way that they can be utilized. So that brings us on to CCTV. So for a lot, what's great about these types of things, and actually I've talked about video management systems or a VMS. Sometimes they'll actually get more called an SMS now, rather than helpfully, a security management system, because they do more than video. But for this conversation, it's we'll call it a VMS. So yeah, the idea is we've got a single pane of which all aspects of electronic security can be managed and be visible, which is really important to the operators. It's in terms of those operators, their primary job is not to be a CCTV operator. Their primary job is to be monitoring whatever the SCADA systems and what's happening with those. And certainly for some arenas whereby you're using central monitoring because your sites are either unmanned or light manned, and therefore there's not always staff there, then actually it's not just one SCADA system they'll be looking at. They could be looking at 10, 20, 40, 50, wherever it is. They may be looking at different aspects, and therefore CCTV is something they just simply do not have the time to sit there and stare at cameras of a percentage of time, maybe not a lot's going on. So starting off, and we've talked about lots of systems, haven't we, and different things and building blocks of electronic security, and monitoring all those on different pieces of software and different screens would be quite overwhelming. So starting off with that single pane where all those electronic security building blocks can be seen, visualized, managed, and used is really important. Certainly most of them, and certainly the best ones, use open standards. I've mentioned ONVIF there, which is a standard for video, but also it's also a standard for analytics. It's a standard for other such things, such as now anyway, certainly in the recent year or two, of integrating things such as metadata and access control, those types of things as well. But also a lot of them do have manufacturer specific integrations, which give a lot more functionality potentially, and also try to kind of keep that central pane or central piece of software to give visibility, central point for alerts, that type of thing. Within that, as well as the more things that people think about, such as cameras and maybe analytics and connectivity, we can also utilize IO in there as well. So connectivity to fire, aircon, whatever, anything that can give us a kind of a pair out. So any kind of kit that you've got that might have some kind of relay or something that could trigger on an error, we can collect that and then we can put it into the system so it's visible to the operators if need be. And of course, then we can generate the alerts. So one of the other things that's really part of the CCTV system, but we've mentioned it earlier, is around analytics that can be used as part of your perimeter protection. So for most people, live analytics is what you'd be looking at doing. We do have some post-processing, but that's really for kind of a different market, really. So we can utilize this for perimeter protection, objects leaving and things like that, or entering, more importantly, stopping and loitering. I think, you know, all people or cars or vehicles kind of loitering or stopping for a period. So if you've got a road, say, leading up to a site, you want to know if a car comes and pauses there, or a vehicle of any description pauses there for an amount of time, because it might mean they're kind of, you know, looking, encasing the joint, that kind of thing. Tripwires, direction violations. So if you get, you know, if you've got specific health and safety and you've got specific kind of routes that you should go through a site, then you can do things such as let us know if a vehicle's going the wrong direction down roads. Unusual behaviors, which is an extension on such things as entering, leaving, loitering. It's an extension of that uses AI to be able to understand if something's a bit more unusual. And then we can go into more detail, such as appearance searching and things like that. Some of the examples there on the images, that's not actually a CNI site, but it is a high value site. It's actually one where they have tobacco products and things like that. So it's one of those types of sites. And the analytics we use there, so we do use perimeter protection there in terms of fence line, but we also use analytics. And actually the analytics is trusted to a point now where that does connect to an offsite arc, where when they get an alert at night, they can check if there's any intruders. Again, they can speak down the speakers, and they also will alert the police if required. So analytics is at a point now where it's certainly trusted enough to be able to be used in that way. So why would we invest in electronic security? Why would you not just put in some cheap CCTV cameras and just have done with that? Hopefully the insurance will be okay with that. It'll be good. So it's about the protection of the investments made by your businesses, really, in generating and power, distributing gas, wherever that is. So that's a big pile of posh words. What does that mean? So fundamentally, protection from theft, vandalism. So some of our earliest kind of forays into these types of worlds were people or businesses and sites having cable theft. So yeah, vandalism and terrorism, as we know, sometimes, you know, people may not be happy about something being near where they are or where they live, demonstrators, that type of thing. So it's to help really protect against those types of things. It's also to help to ensure that only those people who are authorized to be on those sites are actually on that site. Also, the fact that it's audited and controlled. As we said, yes, we can have a keypad on the front gate with the same number it's had for 15, 20 years, and it keeps getting given to every person who needs access. But lots of things around that, but it's not audited and it's not controlled. And so being able to do that's really important. It allows the remote protection of lone workers on site. And so if we are light staffed and we've not, we may be one or two people, maybe you've got a site engineer who's a site engineer for more than one site and therefore doesn't actually spend all their time there. But when they are, they're on their own. So it allows for protection of those. It also allows for that remote verification that maybe RAMs and certain health and safety aspects are adhered to. I know that a number of our clients and some of you guys may be part and on kind of have to deal with the COMA regulations and either maybe a tier 1 or even a tier 2 site. And for those that don't know, that's the control of major accidents and hazards, and they're a set of regulations that cover anything, maybe chemical plants, nuclear, there are various others. So you guys will know if you come under those regulations or not, and it's kind of investing in this to kind of help cover those things as well. So let's have a look at a little bit of some automation. So it can be used to reduce the amount of workload. As I alluded to earlier, a lot of the operators who sit in front of these various screens at these operations rooms, they're there as SCADA engineers and technicians or whatever to primarily look after those systems. And therefore, in terms of electronic security, that should be there to aid them and to not overwhelm them. And for them to not be sat there being CCTV operatives, staring at cameras all day. In terms of higher level electronic security, it's designed to reduce the amount of interruptions to their work and any false alarms. And it also ensures that remote operators are only alerted for genuine reasons. So yeah, and the other things we can do, especially with the new speakers that I shown you earlier, is one of the things we're looking at is potentially in the ops room could be one of those. And if everything's okay, it'll just sit there and they won't do much. But if there is a problem at a site, say it's there's a credible threat from somebody breaking in that's come up from the AI and things, then it can maybe make that light flash red, for example, and give them a visual warning that'll hopefully then they can go into action and start checking out what the problems are with the site. And using the VMS or the video management system as that central point, then we can do quite a lot of automation. A lot of this is really not quite down to your imagination, but it's always good fun when people come up with various things that they want to try and do. Just 1 second. Oh, frog in the throat. An example of that is an engineer, certainly a third party, needs to be on that site to do some checks or whatever that might be. Using the management systems, we can generate a QR code, and then for that engineer for that day, they attend that site, and when they attend it, they then show their phone to the camera on the intercom. That will then open the gate for them, and that could potentially deactivate the IDS, along with the alerting that would happen for the PIDS or the CCTV analytics. We don't want that kind of going off all the time while engineers are on site. Maybe then the PTZ camera then move to that gate, and then maybe we just get, say, a little thing in the corner, maybe just a little amber flash to let them know. The operators know that someone's entered the premises. So that's just an example of how we can use logic and how we can use automation to be able to kind of give a bit more intelligence to the system. And again, the operator wasn't necessarily brought completely off their work during that time period, because even something like an intercom, press the button, man's got to, you've got to then answer phone or whatever you do to answer that intercom, then you've got to press a button to let the person in. And that takes people off their other work. So by using automation in this instance, we're able to kind of cut down on that and make everything a little bit more seamless for the people on site as well. So that's just one example. There's absolutely loads, and lots of people. Every time people have come up with things that they want to do and achieve to make things easier, simpler, and audited, of course, then it's always good for us to kind of work on that and how we can bring that logic. So far, how have we supported different operators? So the idea for us and what we'd like to work with you guys is to provide a robust set of electronic security building blocks, if you like. So we looked at those different technologies, didn't we? And how we can, won't necessarily use all of them, but it may start with CCTV, with analytics, and it may be some gate control, wherever it is. We can use those building blocks to build a service that's fit for the site and for obviously you guys as well. Also important for us to provide a service that's secure and reliable 24/7, and obviously I'm sure that's really important to you as well. We also do a lot of the management in the private cloud, which is part of where we run all of our own systems in our own private data centers, and those vital management systems, as opposed to being sat on a site somewhere that's completely reliant on the internet there and the connectivity there and the electricity and the space for all the servers and all that kind of thing. We can bring all of that complicated management into the private cloud, as I say, and therefore simplify that operation, simplify all of the management and the day-to-day updates and all those things, and also provide a really straightforward SLA that we've kind of built, being an MSP, on all aspects of the system through what we call Bedroq Capture. So yeah, and with that, does anybody have any questions?
Yes, we do have some questions, Mick.
Oh, fantastic.
So we got one. What VMS platforms does Bedroq currently integrate with?
So we have around about 2 or 3. We are aware of many, as you might imagine. We are a premier partner with Milestone, who are, again, they're huge amounts of integrations, huge amounts of connectivity, and things like that. So we're premier partners with them. We know some of our, obviously, other customers do use Avigilon as another one. Again, they have a lot of connectivity and a lot of functionality as well, which is fantastic. Some of the integrations aren't as strong as, say, Milestone, for example. So again, as from an engineering background, which I am, we have a number that we have available to us that we can utilize, and some of that will depend on complexity and what we're trying to achieve, and also, like say, integrations. If somebody has got an existing, say, IDS, and they want to, rather than ripping it out and starting again, if it's, say, a Honeywell Galaxy, which a lot of people use Galaxies, we can take that and we can integrate that with Milestone. So yeah, we've got, those are an example of 2. There are numerous others, as you might imagine. We try to stay clear of maybe some of certainly certain types that are not really up to scratch, or whatever. Yeah, maybe come from a certain country that we shouldn't really be using, that type of thing.
We have another one regarding the access control, I believe. It says, how long is the QR code valid for?
As long as you want it to be. No, generally, obviously, if you've got, so because you are right. I mean, so for example, some people who maybe have used cards in the past may go, actually, for our engineers who are a bit more, our permanent engineers, maybe, or our permanent staff, if it's that type of building, we may want to introduce those to save on cards. They can be as long as you want. They work exactly the same way as a card would. One of the biggest reasons why we've looked at introducing it was for third-party engineers or engineers who just go to a place for the day, and therefore you can issue it and they will use it. Sometimes there can be as much as one time, i.e. gets you through the first gate, because maybe that's how your system works, and after that it's keys or it's whatever, or even there is some people inside you will then meet. So you can even make it so that it works first through the first gate, and that's it. So yeah, as long as you like, it's basically the answer to that question.
All right, thank you. That makes sense. And then we've got another regarding the intercom and telephony. Can this be used as a two-way system?
With intercoms, yes. So you can have two conversations. Yeah. So with the speakers, they were just speakers, so they didn't have microphones in. But yeah, the intercoms can be, yes.
Okay. And our final one for the day. Can these systems be managed from one central control room location? Because it would be useful to improve security on our unmanned sites.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean that's kind of where we've built a lot of this and build those technology building blocks, if you like. So yeah, we didn't really go too much into architectures because lots of people's are different, but essentially, yes, you can have your technology, the different blocks of technology at one site, and a recorder if it's appropriate, depending on the amount. If it's a very small site, we can actually take the recorder and put it in our data center as well, and therefore we can do that if need be. And again, small site, it might not have a proper space for IT equipment, and therefore we can consolidate all that, and we can actually have the recording and the control even for that one site in the cloud if it's appropriate to do so. But then, as you say, we can have operations rooms, which actually have a great versatility in that manner as well, Dylan, because we can also, you may have a permanent one, but you can also have a backup, or a backup can be as much as a laptop. And that's another great thing about the cloud. As long as we, our own private cloud, that is not a public one, is that if whatever rate, power goes off to that operations room, we're in a bit of dire straits now. Actually, in terms of the electronic security, we can give you access from anywhere theoretically, obviously with the right security parameters and the right connectivity into the site, into that. Yeah.
Thanks, Mick. That is all the questions we have for today.
Fantastic.
Thanks for the webinar.
No problem at all. I do believe we've got another one coming up in the next few months, of which the date is still to be decided. I'm sure we'll be in touch, and Dylan will be getting firing out an email to everybody to let them know when that will be.
Yes, and also as promised, we'll send out our recordings of this to everyone, and please feel free to forward it to whoever you think might enjoy it.
Enjoy it, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you very much.